Thank you for showing up. I don't normally read from script, but hold on. Doesn't sound like it.
How's that?
Yep. There you go. Yeah, you're really short. You're too tall. There you go. I don't normally read from script, but I'm going to tonight because I only have 2 minutes. Anyway, my name's Terry Quine, and I'm one of the 3 candidates running for Ward 5 Council. As you came in tonight, you were handed a leaflet and a chocolate. On there basically tells you who I am and what my community involvement has been. To recap very quickly, my wife Nancy and I moved our family here in 1982. We've run a successful business. We owned and run a successful business for 31 years. We raised and educated 3 children in Scugog. In fact, 2 of our children continue to live in Scugog and raise our grandchildren. I've been a member of the Rotary Club of Port Perry for somewhere around 20 years, serving as club president twice. Been on the board of directors for Community Living Durham North for 4 years. Served as interim president for a short time. Played all kinds of sports in this community. Coached ball, hockey, curling. And through the company, we've sponsored a number of teams. And we continue to do that today for sports teams and for initiatives, fundraising initiatives. I believe that in the 40 years in Scugog and 30 years operating the business, my reputation in the community and my community involvement give me the tools and insight to work with council, staff, and voters to continue to move this township forward. Today, the biggest problem, or one of the problems I see, or one of the issues I have, is infilling the industrial park. If you look around town, we have a lot of residential development going on, and we have to bring jobs to Fort Perry, to keep people in Fort Perry, and my 2 minutes are up. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So I'll just do this.
Thanks, Terry. Mr. Benatti.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. JVP. Good evening. I'm Michael. In 2018, I retired after a very successful career in high-tech industry, in entrepreneurial high-tech sales. I developed and managed multi-million-dollar campaigns and projects, including some with Canadian municipalities like Quebec City, Kingston, Hamilton, Montreal, Toronto, and a lot more. These have given me a diverse experience background in municipalities, and on top of that, a very extensive network to draw on if I need to. My background in sales has taught me to work with people, be creative, think independently, think outside the box, and generate win-win situations. I have had my own consulting company since 1980, and I've personally experienced the highs and lows of it. I have been a resident of Ward 5 for over 6.5 years, and you may have seen me in local community events and walking in parade with a gorgeous dog named Max. Since we moved here 6.5 years ago, I started the Walk for Dog Guides. That is now 4th of 300 walks across Canada. Fundraise for our animal shelter, participated in McDonald's McHappy Days, hiked for Oak Ridge's hospice, and paddled along from in support of our museum. Max, as you know, is a certified therapeutic dog, and I volunteer with him at the hospital. I'm a proud member of the 100 Minute Scugog, Support Alliance, and Rotary. I'm a past member of the township's Lake Scugog Committee. I also participated in the waterfront consultations. I say all this because I had a front seat view of how this community works. I was the first to throw my name into the nomination. And I'm done.
Thank you very much. All right, Wilma Wotten.
Just be careful on the foot.
Hello everyone, it's a pleasure to meet you all. My name is Louis. I'll get to start off. I own a business in town called Louis Cafe. It's a very successful business that we started about a year and a half ago. You can catch me here every Saturday collaborating with Old Flame and selling chicken sandwiches as well. I've lived in Port Perry for about 2 years so far, and I won't look back to moving back to Toronto or anything. I love the small town vibe. I love enjoying the waterfront. As a kid, we did have a cottage on the island, so since the age of 5, I've been visiting Port Perry quite often. As an environmental advocate, I'd like to preserve the waterfront. I'd like to make it the best waterfront it can be. I'd like to preserve our natural lands, and I wouldn't like to see any huge developments like condos coming to Port Perry anytime soon. As a young entrepreneur, I'd like to empower the youth. I'd like to make more recreational activities for the youth. I'd like to bring things with low cost and high impact, such as a basketball court that they can build hobbies, connect with friends, and connect with other members of the community. I've learned that Scugog isn't that accessible for everyone. From visiting the stores downtown, the sidewalks on the small streets not being existent, or even the really bad roads by the seniors home. I think we do need to take action, and we do need to put focus on these, because as most of our population is seniors, we have to protect them. There's no sidewalks on streets that are going towards the high schools or public schools, so I think that needs to be addressed. I value and respect diverse cultures, and I believe I would be a great candidate for Ward 5. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I wanted to acknowledge and thank these people for stepping up to the plate. Okay, it's something that, unfortunately, it's the only ward in the entire township where someone is actually, where people are more than one person is running. It's one of those weird elections this time. So thank you very, very much for stepping up and doing this, regardless of the outcome. I think you put in a lot of hours. I also wanted to thank Mr. Doak and his staff for hosting tonight. Typical night at the Old Flame. It's not. But it is a great venue. So thank you very much, Jack, for doing this. We also have a couple of people in the audience who are acclaimed and will be running, or will be acting on council. We have our almost mayor, Wilma Wotten. Where'd you go? There you are. Out in the corner. We have our almost regional councilor, Ian McDougall. We have Ward 4, Robert? Harold, I mean? Whoa. Harold Wright, our almost councillor for Ward 4. Sitting next to him is our Ward 3 councillor, who was almost and was passed as well. And is anybody else here? Did I miss anybody else? No? Okay. Anybody else want to run for Ward 5 while we're here? All right. So, as I said before, if you have questions, please jot them on a piece of paper and get them to me. Just throw them on the table here and we'll get them. So we have a few questions that a bunch of people put together, and I was going to start with those. So as I mentioned before, everybody will have 2 minutes to answer the question, and then there will be a 30-second rebuttal at the end if necessary. The rebuttal is specifically to address any points of that question that were made after you spoke. Okay, it's not to bring up new points or anything like that. All right, and again, please be very respectful of each other. The intent here is to tell everyone what you're going to do, not what other people haven't done. Okay. So the first question, we have a lake, Lake Scugog. It's our main tourist asset. Revitalization of the lake is very important. So the question is, do you feel the enhancement project, which is underway, will give us a lake that we can be proud of, and at what cost? Okay, let's look at that. I need to repeat it. All right, let's start with Terry.
The Scugog Enhancement Program, as John alluded to, has started. We haven't put it, sure, there isn't a shovel in the ground yet, but it is very important, I think, to work with the lake to try to purify, to get rid of all the contaminants going into the lake. The one thing that I think can make Port Perry a beautiful place to visit will be that enhancement on the lake. I think it's going to be a thumb up for all of the residents of Stuga. That's about all I have.
Thank you. All right, so the same question to Louis. The question is, do you feel the enhancement project will give us a lake that we can be proud of, and at what cost?
The Lake Scugog is one of our main tourist asset, and revitalization of the lake is extremely important. The Lake Scugog Enhancement Project is very important. The Lake Scugog Enhancement Project is an environmental improvement and ditching the project for Port Perry Bay that benefits the whole lake, for improving quality of fish life and to improve land and tourism and recreational opportunities throughout the waterfront trail extension and fishing platforms. I fully support the Lake Scugog Enhancement Project, which will provide a range of benefits to the Lake Scugog and the surrounding region. Thank you.
Short night. All right, do you need me to repeat the question, or are we good?
Can you repeat it in French, please?
Dutch, maybe.
So I'm going to start off with a controversy. First of all, John, not everyone will agree that Lake Scugog is our main tourist asset. And I'll tell you, we don't even own the lake. So that being said, the enhancement project is a necessary first step. It covers a fraction of the total lake, but an important fraction, our fraction. The costs are currently estimated at $5.5 million, that's what you asked. And it's up for the $2 million when I was on the Lake Scugog Enhancement Committee. $4.5 million has already been raised, and there are still some large options to explore. The lake is man-made, and we are on a journey to learn how to manage the lake. We need to look how we manage the lake differently in the future. We've seen deterioration and loss of fisheries, increased weeds, invasive species, water quality is deteriorating. There are multiple entities involved. Parks Canada and the Trent-Serwin Waterway manages the navigation and owns the lake. Fisheries Canada is concerned about the geese and the fish. Kawartha Conservation owns and manages the shoreline. Businesses around the lake, like the different marinas, also are involved. Scugog Lake Stewards provides research and knowledge. The Ontario Provincial Ministry of Transportation is also involved because they run the causeway. The city of Kawartha Lakes from the northern part. The Mississaugas of Scugog Islands love the lake. So many players. In my opinion, we need to lead the coalition to an effective long-term solution. A lot of problems of the lake come from the increasing temperature due to climate change. Durham region has one of the highest emissions per capita than other Canadian regions in the GTA. Development patterns are destroying.
All right. Okay, so the lake is definitely an asset. Maybe not our biggest, but definitely an asset. Because somebody in this room once, about 4.5 years ago, made the statement that without the lake we'd be Uxbridge. And that has always held true.
I was there, Jack. I thought.
I wasn't going to say that Jack said that, okay?
I said it.
And we stand by it. All right, the next question. The grain elevator, it's a unique structure, as everybody knows. Unfortunately, it sits empty on a piece of prime real estate. It's been denied historical status by the federal government. So what, in your opinion, should we do with it? And we'll start this one with Louis first.
The grain elevator was built in 1874, and this is an important heritage building, which is one of the oldest remaining buildings in downtown. Port Perry historic grain elevator does not need to be destroyed, it needs to be reinvented. It currently is used from time to time for filming and movie production shoots. I think making use of it just a little bit more could definitely benefit the residents. We can simply use it for vendors, event venues, possibly a waterfront restaurant or a banquet facility, or even an art center, which we can promote local artists to showcase their art or paintings and sell their paintings from there. I don't think we need any more development so close to the waterfront, as the waterfront action plan has approved for future mixed use development with commercial and community uses at grade, with residential above, right at the corner of North and Water Street. Thank you.
Thanks very much. So the same question to Eagle, what your opinion should we do with the grain elevator?
My first opinion would be, we need to understand why the federal government has denied us historical status. Was it, like so many people have told me, because of the add-on structures built around it over time? And if so, can we make some adjustments and reapply? Did we not sufficiently document its history? Could we combine it with a Palmer statue and the planned Bill Lishman statue and a possible steam engine from an old railway days to generate a historical plaza? In my opinion, the grain elevator is our town landmark and should be developed as such. I have traveled extensively, and most successful tourist towns have a key landmark. This does not mean more studies. Another thought is to rework it architecturally into a functional tourist attraction. A key example, in my mind, is the Distillery District in Toronto. They took a bunch of the derelict buildings and turned it into a tourist destination. That's my opinion.
Thank you. And the same question to Terry.
My belief is that there have been a number of studies done on the old mill, and truthfully, I don't know the results of those studies, but my plan or my suggestion would be, until a definitive answer is made as to how to deal with the structure itself, maintain it, don't let it maintain so it doesn't rot in place, and that you have something to work with when a decision is made on by council and input from the voters as to what to do, how to deal with it.
Thanks. Just for the information on the first question about the enhancement project for the lake, for those of you who are not familiar with it, there was a great article in the Standard a couple of weeks ago with Rob Naservi, who is in charge of the Lake Stewart, and he explains it all. And for those of you who missed that, I know there's a fantastic show on Rogers running right now where Rob is explaining the entire project. So I just wanted to throw that in there.
What's the name of that show?
The name escapes me. Alrighty. Next question.
John, can we ask a follow-up question to that one?
Sure. You want to do it right now? Or you want to?
Is that okay?
Yeah, you want to do it now? Or you want to do it? Yeah.
The question I have is that each of the candidates have various opinions on the mill. But I'd like to know if they believe the vision is to repurpose the mill, make it a tourist attraction. Would they support selling the mill to someone who has a plan to turn it into a usable structure?
Okay, so for those who didn't hear that, the question from Jack is do these folks support possibly selling the grain elevator to some organization who would continue to obviously keep it in place and to turn it into something that would benefit the town? All right. Who do we start with? Billy?
Great question, Jack. My response to that is as long as there's some sort of lease or some sort of agreement in place that they won't renovate the outside and they would properly use the inside, I don't see any problem with that. As long as they're not changing how the outside looks and keeping its historic front, I think that there shouldn't be any problem with that.
As I said at the beginning, my entire career has been built on windmill. So Jack, the answer to your question is yes. Absolutely. Contractually, I would want to make sure that it's ironclad, that stays as a landmark for our town. And that the township in some manner has some veto on if you decide to, for example, put all sorts of Christmas lights all over it or something like that. It has to stay as a landmark. It is our landmark. That's what I want
My answer would be that the proof's in the pudding. Whatever the contract would be between the township and the entrepreneur, will say, would have to be scoped and understood by both parties, and I agree with I vote mine to that.
All right, I think everybody's in favor. We don't want to tear that sucker down, do we? I understand that there is some negotiation taking place between the township and a party for a rental, but I don't know anything about that other than that. So we'll let that one go. Okay. Did you guys want to rebut at all, or are you good? Okay. All right. Queen Street, one of the prettiest streets in Canada. It was closed a few years ago to vehicular traffic for quite a while in the summer. And the question is, there are mixed feelings about that. How many people remember it being closed? And I mean, the concept of closing it was interesting. It didn't look too pretty at the time. But I guess the question is this something that people should promote? And how do you folks feel about this, and how would you envision it happening? So we're talking about closing Queen Street for a month or 6 weeks, whatever, in the summer to vehicular traffic, just for pedestrians. So we'll start this one with you.
I vote. I believe the street was closed for Culture Day, closed the School Dog Arts and the street party on September 24th this year. And when I came downtown, I saw people enjoying themselves. Everyone I have spoken to since then, in terms of people, restaurants, retailers, they've told me they had a fantastic day. So what this showed is that it makes much more sense than just a simple street closure. There needs to be a focus. There needs to be activities, music, engagement, and a buy-in from all stakeholders. And we as a council should lead this initiative. I do not support closing the street for the sake of closing the street. I believe the occasional closing of Queen Street for well planned out and well thought out events like we experienced September 24th would be beneficial to the community and the retailers. Nothing makes me prouder than seeing tourists downtown taking pictures. And we know what that means. Next thing you know, it's going to be all over social media, and we're going to have more tourists coming to town, and we're going to have much more exposure and much more publicity. Thank you.
All right, Gary?
Having some experience with street closure or Queen Street being closed, we had a shop at one time on Queen. We basically was closed for the Santa Claus parade. And at that time, because there wasn't much else being publicized or being pushed in town. Most of the merchants didn't like the street being closed, simply because even though it drew a lot of people into town, most of them came into your facility to get warm. Didn't spend, if you will, didn't engage with the staff, and consequently, it was not a popular venue. Anyway, as far as closing the street is concerned, I think it has to be a combination of an agreement between the merchants. What part of the street's being closed? Is it all the way from Simcoe Street all the way down to Water, or is it just from the Royal Bank down? When that happens, the merchants at the west end are upset because there's no traffic up there for them, for their restaurant or whatever facility that they have. So they're concerned about that. So you have to decide what part of Queen Street is closed and for how long and what the event would be.
Thank you. And Louis, same question.
Port Prairie's downtown is a historic downtown tourist destination with beautiful streets and a great waterfront and a vibrant commercial district. The vehicle traffic closure was from the stretch of Queen Street between Water Street and Perry Street, which creates a pedestrian-friendly downtown core. This would have a positive impact to expand strolling spaces for shoppers and pedestrians, looking for a physical distance, especially during COVID time. This is very smart to be able to maintain standing far from one another. Overall, I don't think that the street closure to vehicle traffic should be permanent, only for major events. We would lose many parking spots and possibly more traffic on the other smaller streets if Queen Street is closed. Also, no local merchants show any notable increase in sales when these events happen. It may also be hard for seniors to park further away and walk to the stores. So, yes, thank you very much.
Thank you. For those of you not aware, the Business Improvement Association, the BIA, is Queen Street, John Street, and Mary Street from Simcoe to the lake. And they have a big say in what happens on Queen Street. So I know when they closed the street a couple of years ago, it was a very, very like a 50-50 sort of thing. So just to let you know that. And of course that is part of Ward 5, as is the grain elevator. Okay. Alrighty. So many residents avoid downtown on weekends because they believe there's no parking. And I use the word believe because there is parking behind the CIBC, but God, that's a long walk. I mean, I would drive to downtown Toronto, park, and walk 20 minutes to go see a show. But God forbid if it's more than 35 seconds here, I'm dead. So, that's just a comment. So there are mixed feelings. There should be some initiative. Parking is a bit of an issue on Queen Street, and if you don't believe me, try and find a parking spot on Queen Street. So what are some initiatives that you guys could come up with to change this? Okay?
Thanks, John. We know where you stand on it, but that's okay. First and foremost, I would push to address the blocked fence parking downtown, which you see behind us here with that fence. Drawing on my sales background, I would suggest we bring the relevant parties to the table and negotiate a win-win resolution. I believe that's possible. I don't think it's a complicated issue. Too much time has passed, and we have new players on staff that should be able to resolve this as a win-win. Second, I would like to clearly and factually document the issue. Being from an IT background, everything is computers, right? I would put a drone up and take video of our parking lots and street parking on 5 different dates and times that the BIA proposes in advance. We can then clearly see how many parking spaces are available and the extent of the problem. In my opinion, people also avoid coming downtown because of traffic on 7A and Simcoe, and the conditions of our local roads and the lack of sidewalks from outlying areas. I have heard many new residents say they prefer to walk or cycle downtown, yet we do not see a lot of bicycle parking and no sidewalk to safely walk from Copper Creek to downtown. Our new residents, in particular, are sensitive to climate change and want safe and pleasant ways to walk and bike to town. Another option, if we determine that parking is an issue, most of the time, is exploring using the fairgrounds with an electric shuttle on weekends. We could consider paid parking with stickers to exempt local resident taxpayers. That's my thoughts.
Thank you. And next we'll go to Terry. Parking.
Parking. I would take exception to the word parking versus convenient parking. The Rotary Club of Port Perry had Ribfest for 4 years, and we brought in somewhere around 14,000 people through the gates on the weekend. What we did at that point is we organized a shuttle to come from the community center downtown. That lasted 2 years because it wasn't being used. There was parking everywhere in behind by the boat launch. There's all kinds of parking down there. The biggest problem we have is people wanting to do the 15-second walk to wherever they want to go versus walk for an extra 5 minutes or so. I think I will hit it on the head that there's something that we should be doing with Brock's, but that's something for the next council. And other than that, I believe there's enough parking in town that we don't have to have a shuttle or just a matter of people walking.
Thank you. And Louis?
So I agree with Ivo and Terry. I think that the Brock's parking lot should definitely be utilized. Owning a business in front of on Water Street, I see as soon as somebody parks, they spend at least 5 minutes looking for a parking meter. It is normal to pay for parking in many different parks across the GTA, and I think we should normalize it in Fort Perry. I think we should offer taxpayers some sort of sticker that they can keep on their windshield that provides them free access to parking in parks, while tourists have to pay their price for visiting the park. For example, I went to Liverpool Beach last weekend, and parking there was $20 flat. So if there's so much people willing to pay there, I don't see why people wouldn't want to pay here in Fort Perry.
Thanks very much. The issue with the parking has been going on for 100 years. I was on the wayfinding committee for a while, and just before the pandemic, they were planning on putting parking signs in places so people know where to park. For example, behind the Chamber BIA office, there's about 7 or 8 spots there that never seem to get used. John Stewart's driveway is always a good place to park. But it is an issue for people. Thank you very much. So people have complained about some retail stores closing early and opening late, which frustrates shoppers. As Queen Street is in Ward 5, do you see this as a problem, and if so, can you propose a solution? And we'll start with Eagle, I think, right? You started the last one. Yeah. Eric.
Thanks, John. I started the last one, that's all there. Retailers are free to choose their hours. We can't tell them when to open or close. We can only encourage them to open early and close late by bringing potential customers into town. This is a catch-22 situation. Shoppers are frustrated by the hours, and retailers are frustrated by the lack of shoppers. We can only address what we can control. More downtown events and more promotion and marketing will bring more potential customers into downtown, which I believe will drive more retail hours. And then a key issue, when we did the Paddle de Nonquam, we had less than 70 entries. I talked to some of my friends out of Toronto, and they didn't know about it. And if they had known, you would have had about 150 kayaks up there. The township may want to explore short-term incentives for retailers who open longer hours to facilitate some trials and exploration. I have been told that stores open until 9 p.m. on Thursday and Friday night in the distant past when we had things happening downtown. We need to have reasons for different people seeking different things to converge on one area so we can have a vibrant downtown. Thank you, John.
Thank you. And Gary will just go around.
Thank you. Having a store for the last 31 years, I've learned that you can't sell from an empty shelf. And the same thing with your hours. We have a VIA, we have a Chamber of Commerce that would be ideal if they work together and to facilitate the hours. Because having people come in town, even if you're closed, they get very discouraged. They won't come back. So you need to coordinate between the two organizations to promote the town. And that's basically it.
And Louis.
So I think for business owners this time it can be a challenge because they need staff and timing to prepare to organize to stay for longer hours. There's a big staff shortage all over Fort Perry downtown. For example, the Tim Hortons actually closes at 3 o'clock now due to lack of employees. So that's happening all over town. But we can focus on and promote awareness to the current businesses that are open till late, like the Old Flame, Bamboo Restaurant, Saffron, the Sandwich Shack, so we can promote those restaurants because they're open later. I also believe in work-life balance, and if the business owners are working longer, I believe this can have an impact on their life. The Port Perry BIA also hosts events that encourage business owners to stay open for longer, such as Moonlight Madness and Canada's Day Long Weekend. So I feel like if business owners to stay open longer, there's their opportunity.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions from the floor? Anybody write anything down or have any questions? No? You guys good with everything? All's running well and smooth? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Yes?
I applied for the download. The roads or the side streets in Port Perry.
Sorry.
The roads and side streets in Port Perry, they are in terrible shape.
Side streets and roads in Port Perry in terrible shape, except for Simcoe Street now, which is beautiful. Okay, so what is your question? Are they going out?
If anything is going to be done on those.
Okay.
So many potholes, so many.
Okay, obviously these people have never been on council before, so it's strictly their opinion and what they feel we could do, but let's ask that question. We'll start with Louis. What do you think should be done with the roads?
So for potholes, I saw something on the township website where you actually can take a picture and upload your claim, and then they will get back to you in a timely manner. So that's one good thing. It's easy to do from your phone. Another thing is going door to door. I have seen the side streets and the lack of sidewalks. On some streets that are connected to the high school, there's no sidewalks and kids are walking on the damaged roads. So we definitely need to bring awareness to that and definitely need to prioritize those issues.
Just where do you go?
Thank you, John. One of the things I keep stressing about is communications. What I don't know if everybody here knows, but we had a 6.5% increase in our taxes this year on the municipal portion. 3% of that has been allocated strictly to roads. At the last council meeting, there was a report given to us by an independent consultant that showed that over the last 4 years, our roads have improved just slightly, which is a positive thing because they were going like this before, getting worse. Now they're starting to improve. There's a couple areas that I think are important. With this little event that has happened, I've found a lot of issues with some of the roads where you can't run a wheelchair over it, right? So I have to go rent a scooter to be able to get around, and even that, sometimes I'm staring at a tip. One of the issues that I heard from some of the people on the door knocking was the issue of buses, school buses running down streets that don't have sidewalks. So to me, that's also important. And maybe we should simply say no buses on streets without sidewalks because it ain't safe for our kids. We have to, we're way behind on our budget for road repair and road maintenance. We have a plan. There is a prioritization done for it. There is more funding being allocated to it. Maybe we need to look how effectively we can deploy it. That's my thoughts.
Thank you, Terry.
From my understanding on the roads, to bring every road in Scugog up to A1, A class, that there's a deficiency of $175 million. In the fund, the road fund right now, from my understanding, there's something like $1.3 million. And alluding to what Ivo was saying, 3% of your tax bill is going to roads, to the reserve. I believe, if I did the math correctly, on a $5,000 tax, you are contributing somewhere around $150 of your $5,000 is going towards roads per person. So there are things that are happening. There's a plan. You just have to stick to it.
Yeah, okay, sorry. Well, but can't we just take $175 million and split it amongst 22,000 people? And just,
I'd be happy to do that.
yeah, just get the sucker done.
Residents would be very happy with that.
No, I'm not looking for any roads. No, I'm just looking to get Mass Road paved. I'm just kidding, I love the road. Anybody else, any other questions? All right, Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, Jack.
I just wanna know each candidate's, opinion on the fair.
Alrighty, so Jack's question is each candidate's opinion on the fairgrounds. Fairgrounds, of course, at the top end of Port Perry. It's, what is it, 20 acres or something? 23 acres. But it gets used once a year, twice a year maybe. So let's hear your opinions on that. We'll start with Terry. Let's start with Terry.
Thank you. The fairgrounds is 23 acres, from my understanding, and from one of the executive on the fair board was telling us that it's being used 22 or 23 times a year on a regular basis. So a lot of the things that we don't see, which is, the big thing is the fair. People use the track for walking, for running their dog. So it's being used, but not to its full capacity. There's been a number of suggestions that it should be beautified. It should be enhanced with trees, shrubbery, that kind of thing, to make it more eye appealing. But on the long haul, my guess is that their lease is up, I believe, in another 6 years, and they have to negotiate, the fair board negotiates with the township. The township owns the property, the fair board owns the buildings. The things I've been able to dig up is that it was sold to the township about somewhere during the First World War for $1. And since then, the township owns the property, so that's who they have to negotiate with.
Thank you. And Louis?
Yeah, so I agree with everything Terry said. We didn't know that there's so much activities being held at the fairgrounds. The board of the fairgrounds told us that. In my opinion, we should protect our fairgrounds. We should plant more trees in it to protect our tree canopy. It's one of our heritage lands. We should definitely keep it in our use it for our fair. I definitely like to see it getting used more often in terms of recreational sports and stuff like that, or anything else. Any good ideas that we can implement into the fairgrounds that it can use during the winter, spring, fall, or summer. I think we should definitely look into that.
Thanks, John. Good suggestions so far. A couple of things that I would look at, and again, I go back to my background in sales and looking for win-wins. We've got some absolutely outstanding landscape architects in our region here. I know of some because I've met them. And we also have a lot of nurseries in the area in terms of tree nurseries and so on. We have a lot of volunteers in our community, and I can attest to that, a lot of great people. So how about if we look at all three of them and see how we can beautify that park and make it something like, I don't know, Central Park in New York, right? We're hosting events there. Let's get these nurseries to donate some mature trees. Let's get some of our landscape architects to give us some suggestions on how we can do that. Let's get some of volunteers to go ahead and plant the trees, right? It isn't going to cost us a fortune, and we can get a nice, interesting, beautiful fairgrounds that we can use more often. And it's used sometimes for the Terry Fox Run as an example, and some other activities. So, I think we need to really look at that and talk amongst ourselves and make sure we understand how important it is for us, right? Because that's my opinion.
Thank you. I remember about 4 years ago when I moderated the mayoral debate, the question came up about the fairgrounds, and it came up a little bit differently. It was proposed to the two people running that they sell off the fairgrounds and relocate them to an area that's just a little bit north of town. Apparently there's a property there. So that was one of the options. Never heard anything more on that. But I just, a little bit of background there. So anybody else? Any other? Yes, sir.
I'd like to hear all three candidates talk about the fairground and are against, sound like against turning it into a housing development. I think the last thing Port Perry needs is to become a bedroom community with just sprawling subdivisions and no soul. So it will be very sad. And obviously I don't have skin in the game. I've lived in town for 3 years, but It would be very sad to see more Perry become just a soulless bedroom community. So my question is on green spaces. The area by the Legion is being turned into yet more houses, and we live in Corker Street in the subdivision, which is lovely, but we have young children, and we've been given quite a small park to service an entire subdivision, and our green space is being taken away. So I just wonder what candidates, how they feel, what their thoughts are on green spaces.
Very fair question, very good question. So the question is how does everyone feel about green space in subdivisions and in certain areas? I'm sure there's some sort of a ratio that's applied when they build something. It doesn't make it enough necessarily, but we'll start with, who's your last name? Let's start with Louis on this one, okay? More green space.
So I do promote protecting our green spaces. I do promote bringing more bigger playgrounds for the smaller areas with the young families and children. I don't have enough information on how they determine the size of the playground by how many houses. So I can definitely look into that and get your email after, and we can definitely talk about that afterwards. But I don't have the full information for how they decide on how big the park should be. Thank you.
Well, I will tell you that my grandkids come here to go to the park, right? So for me, green space is really important. We have an official plan that we've developed in 2018, got approved, spent a lot of money on it, and that includes a certain amount of green space per development, right? That land you're talking about doesn't belong to us, it belongs to the Legion, and the Legion made a decision to sell the land. What the developer did, and I talked to them, is they are building, I think, 8 houses on there, there's a number, but 13 houses. But they are respecting our official plan. They're not putting up three-story back-to-back condos, they're putting up two-story homes that fit in with the neighborhood. So they're respecting what we said as regulations, right? But at the same point in time, you know, like you heard us talk about the fairgrounds, you know, we want to preserve the green space we have. However, this was the Legion's decision, and you can't tell them not to sell their property.
Sure.
Before any kind of development goes in Stu Dog, you have to have a site plan, you have to do all your due diligence, you have to do all your checks and balances, and then that goes before council for approval, if I understand the process correct. And if there's a small part versus a large part, that can be changed. Again, it has to be a site plan. All your due diligence has to be done. To make a larger park, I don't have an answer for you. I don't know what the answer would be because your subdivision has already been approved and built.
Thank you. I would keep hammering at that forever. Like, just pounce on township's doors continually. If it were me, but it's not, so it's definitely a suggestion. The green space is very, very important. I'm glad we have a dog park. That came about 5-6 years ago, I think. That's another asset to the community. Okay, anybody else?
John?
Yes, Dr. Stewart.
I'd like to ask each of the candidates to think of a particularly difficult or challenging situation they've had to deal with either in their business or in their previous life, and share what they've learned that will help them succeed in dealing with the challenges that are going to present if they were to become elected to municipal council.
That's a great question. So the question for those who didn't hear it is that what challenges or issues have these people faced in their life, either in business or personal, that they've overcome or that they've handled, which will help them which will help them perform their job as council. Good summary?
Can I use 2 examples? Can I use 3 examples? First one I'm most proud of, is I got Deborah the mayor. Definitely married way above that status. And she's helped me so much all these years. Anyways, the second one is taking advantage of this situation where I ended up with a fractured kneecap like 3 weeks ago. And I used that instead to learn more about accessibility and learn more what the challenges accessible people have. And it's so simple, and little things that I didn't notice before, I'm noticing now. A third one, I guess, the major one that I like to talk a lot about is my business and a challenge that I had when I was working for a entrepreneurial company. We came up against a small company called SAP. And if anybody here knows who they are, this is a gigantic company with millions of dollars of marketing and so on. And here we are trying to sell this small company called Gillette software to maintain their systems. And I've got this huge company that's probably taking people to dinner, hockey games, football games, you know what, right? And I'm sitting there and says, how do I, Little David, beat Goliath at its own game? And what we did is we sought to understand the issues the customer was facing. It turns out that there was 2 machines making the blades, and we focused on how we could make those machines more effective and improve the maintenance on it so that they could save the $150,000 that they were losing every minute those machines were down. And based on that fact, it was a win-win situation made for everybody, and they bought our solution. Thank you.
Terry, life experiences that will help you in the future?
I think the answer, I mean, I can give you a number of tragedies, if you will, or a number of incidences in my life that we had to overcome. And I say we because Nancy and myself and the family. I think the biggest thing is perseverance. I think the biggest thing is believing in yourself. And I think that working together with other people to recognize the problem, resolve the problem, and then move forward.
As a young business owner, I was faced with a lot of difficulties starting my business. We didn't have startup funding, we didn't have employees, I was new to it, I had no experience. So here's a little secret. So I have a fried chicken store on Port Perry there, on the Water Street. I actually learned how to make fried chicken. I got a job at Popeyes for a month, and I learned their recipes, I learned what they had to do, and then I started my own business. But then there was no money to start it, so I had to look for different funding, funding for my social media, funding for marketing, startup funding. I had to look for everything myself. I didn't have any parent support, so I can say I'm really proud of that, and that's a challenge that I've overcome. Thank you.
Is that answered? Yeah.
That's good.
You want any of my life experiences?
No.
Any other questions? Anybody? Christine, yes, Christine.
There was a comment earlier about how much construction's been going on in Port Perry. We've had a lot of new construction over the last 10, 15 years. We've had a lull there for a while. In Ward 5, we have an amazing opportunity to offer a diverse amount or a different type of housing. I don't see a lot of housing that we cater to not-for-profit, geared to income, or senior housing. What are you going to do with elected to service those populations?
Okay, so you're talking like affordable housing, basically, right? Which
Absolutely.
roughly $100 million to $2 is not an issue. Okay, so affordable housing. We'll start with Terry.
Affordable housing. We had the lull that you referred to was because of sewage capacity. And now the new sewage plant is up and running and it's at capacity again. The majority of what you see building now has been on the books, from my understanding, for the last 10, 15 years. And because of no capacity in sewage plant, they were on hold. Now the new sewage plant's in place, they get the okay to go ahead, they're building, now we're full again, or very close to it. So anything that's going to come down the pipe now is going to be sitting until another module is added to the sewage plant to handle the capacity. When that's going to happen, I don't know, that's the region. I'm not privy to that. So anything that is being proposed, that you're proposing today, likely you're not going to see light on that for I don't know how long. I honestly don't know. I'd be giving you a number that I couldn't back up.
Good.
Housing is a complex matter which requires municipalities to work both with the province and the federal government. I will advocate for more provincial funding to create more local affordable housing options. Also, to ensure adequate housing for Port Perry residents, council will need to work in partnership with co-op, non-profit, and for-profit housing providers and consult community members to address the housing issues. Thank you.
Andy.
Thanks, John. Excellent suggestions so far. One thing I found, the city of Montreal built an additional module on their water treatment out in Pointe-aux-Trembles in less than 3 years. So I understand that we have an issue with capacity. I also understand when I moved here, I was told there would be 500 units built. I also see there's a lot more than 500 units that have been built since the 6.5 years I'm here. So I'm not sure about the capacity issue, because last thing I heard was something about that we are using less than they were estimating, so we have more capacity. I don't understand, but I understand what they mean by that, but somehow the numbers aren't there. But the other issue is, of course, that the issues involve federal, provincial, regional, and municipal cooperation. I think we need to really focus on that, because I'm hearing from all the seniors here as, when I can't work my house anymore, when I can't support my house anymore, where do I go? I don't want to lose them. They're part of our community. How do we keep them here? Let's get together and figure out a win-win for everybody. We also have an issue is the employers around here have a tough time finding employees, right? And I've heard, everybody says we can't find employees. Well, how do we get the low-cost housing? We need the employees. We got to figure out a way to figure it, right? It shouldn't be rocket sciences. It should require a dedicated effort, focused on bringing the partners to the table and saying, this is what we need, how do we do it? As opposed to, should we do it, could we do it, when do we do it, how do we do it, let's get a committee. This is what we need, how do we do it? Thank you.
It kind of answers the question, but I don't think it's what you want to hear, right? Yeah.
Not really.
Yeah. I don't know.
Can I just add?
Yeah.
So we have these new subdivisions that are being built, and my understanding in the Durham region, there's a certain amount that must be allocated to different populations. And
Right.
they have to, when developers come in, they have to allocate not-for-profit, they have to allocate senior housing, etc. Doesn't happen in Port Perry.
Okay. I would address that to the lady across from you at the table.
Well, she would find out.
At least after October 24th. But,
That's my
I'll be on
concern.
it then.
what's that?
I'll be on it then.
Okay. No, it's a legitimate concern. Is it true that the development at the corner of King and Simcoe is no longer happening? Or is that still on? Do you know? Does anybody know? No? Okay.
It's circled in red on the municipal plan.
Meaning what?
I don't know, the others are green.
Oh, okay. Because they were putting something like 80 townhouses in there, right? I heard that. So.
I've heard that's going
Sorry? That is going ahead?
I have heard that.
Okay. Okay. The thing I think, and I don't want to make this a housing platform, but the thing that does irk me a lot about, and nothing to do with ski alleys anywhere, is that an area gets designated for developing housing. And then because they can't sell it, it sits vacant for years and years. Like that stretch south of Canadian Tire, it's an eyesore when you come into town. It just sits there with a little little building on it that says, buy a house or something. And I don't know if there's rules in place where if they decide they're gonna do it, and they should do it within 2 years or something, but if it's 6, 7 years vacant, it's, anyway, it's not what we're here about. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
My concern is about the development in town and how rapidly it's happening. And as an example, this mitigation pond or park that happens across this, on Simcoe, across between the tire, like, I'm not sure who's responsible for that or who's paying for it, but basically it's to accommodate the new buildings that are going in. And I believe that through either good management or good luck, Port Perry's evolved into this wonderful place to live, which makes it a target for development.
Sure.
They move in, they bring all kinds of stuff in, and then they leave. And 10 years later, Port Perry's responsible for fixing the roads and the sewers and building that big pond. And there's 100 studies that will tell you that it doesn't really save you money to increase the population, it costs you money. And so my concern is, what do we do? And why can't we make the developers responsible for the streetlights that have to go in to accommodate the traffic, or the sidewalks, or the extra school stuff? There should be more responsibility to those people who are making a lot of money from our town. That's my
Very good point. Obviously, people agree with you. I think most people would agree with you. I remember going back in the day when the Oak Ridges Marine was first developed, and Skewdog got a big chunk of it, and we're expected to look after it without any tax revenue. Because, people from 416 come up and ride their bikes on our trails, but we have to maintain the trails. So I remember that issue taking place way back when. But anyways, we're going to keep this back to these three guys that are going to fall asleep on me. Anybody else have any questions for these potential councilors? Yes. Michael.
I would like to ask their opinions on how they would work towards enhancing collaboration between the township and the two major business organizations in town, BIA and the Chamber, whose offices are in their wards.
Okay, so the question is the township, the BIA, and the Chamber are all in Ward 5, and I'm not sure if you're suggesting there's a miscommunication or lack of communication between them, but
on enhancing
how would they enhance the communication? Okay, all right, let's start with you, Will.
Thanks, John. You gave me the easy questions, eh? Michael, I don't have an answer for you except that I know the way I operate, which is basically very much hands-on. I would be in your office on a regular basis. We would have our dialogue on a constant basis. And I'd always look for a win-win for everybody, right? And that's all it comes down to, is communications. We may not agree on everything, and I'll tell you this, we will not agree on everything, but you'll know where I stand, where the ward constituents stand, and together we can come to a conclusion that makes our time much more effective. So it's basically communications and wanting to have a win-win for everybody.
We'll just go in a circle here. Very good. Wait your turn. We're going in a circle. In case you didn't figure out what happened.
Sorry.
As much as I agree with Ivo, it's communications. The BIA and the Chamber, you've got to sit down at the table, you've got to come up with a plan, you've got to talk, you've got to figure out which works for both of you. It's communication. I can't agree more with Ivo. Now it's your turn.
I agree with Ivo and Terry. I don't know where the Skewdog Chamber or the townships stand with each other, so I wouldn't be able to give you a clear answer, but definitely communication is important. We have to see where they need each other and how they can work with each other and find us solid grounds on where they can work with, and hopefully we can make an alliance together. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. For those of you not aware, that, as I mentioned before, the BIA, the Business Improvement Community or Association, is Mary Street to John Street, downtown core. The Chamber is all the businesses in Skewdog Township. There's about 250 or so that are members, something like that. And then the township, of course, we know. So those organizations play specific roles. The Chamber, for example, does the Santa Claus Parade. The EIA does the beautifying of the town, the Christmas lights and things like that. Okay, for those of you who are interested, tomorrow morning, I get to do a fireside shot for the Chamber with Todd McCarthy, our new MPP. So that's at Sunnybury, I think. So at 8 o'clock. So for those of you who are interested in hearing Todd McCarthy. Okay, any other questions? We good? Okay, I have one last one here, and that's why did you decide to run? And please don't say to make a difference.
So I decided to run for council because all Fort Perry residents should have the ability to live, work, and play in our beautiful town. As a resident and a young entrepreneur, I hope to bring my enthusiasm and passion to council. I value equality, diversity, anti-racism, and I will ensure that all voices are respected, valued, and heard. Thank you.
Thanks, John. There are several reasons that came together for me to be the first to submit my candidacy way back in May. First and foremost, friends and neighbors said that Port Perry needs someone with my passion and can-do spirit as a counselor. They wanted fresh perspectives with experience. I believe we can communicate better, and the township response and communications after the May tornado should be reviewed and our emergency plans updated. I have been blessed to work with many municipalities across Canada, and I would like to share that experience and network with my friends and neighbors in Scugog. I entered this race day one because people I respect said, you are either part of the problem or part of the solution. I was frustrated by the lip service given to the buy local and shop local by the township. For example, when the Scugog pet licenses include a $50 coupon to shop at PetSmart in Whitby. I don't know the details of the negotiations or the reasoning behind that, but I think we need to recognize the businesses that support our communities. Those are my reasons. Thank you.
I believe that 40 years living in Scugog, 31 years owning a business, my reputation in the community, my community involvement in those 40 years, gives me the tools and the insight to work with council, staff, voters, and to continue to move this township forward.
So we did offer everyone 2 minutes to do a summary at the end of tonight, incorporating some of the answers or some of the questions that they have. So did you folks want to do that?
Sure.
Yeah. You want to? Well, you start, Terry.
Oh. Should have said sure. Running for council, I think, is an important adventure. What really sort of drove me to it was the acclamation of all the other positions other than Ward 5. That's not decorum. That's what we're looking for. Democratic? Thank you. Democracy. That's not democracy. You have to have the push and shove. But the bottom line is that as of today at 8 o'clock, or I believe it was 10 o'clock this morning, you can vote online, which is very important. Everybody can, you all got your tickets, you all got your passwords, so you can vote. And then the last is the in paper or on paper. So it's just important.
Good.
I just wanted to say we've all been working so hard. We've all been going to the doors. It's finally the week we've all been waiting for. It's election week. I just wanted to remind everybody, please do not forget to vote. I was on the vote. I was making a vote in the morning, and I guess too much people were on the site, so the site crashed. So don't leave it till last minute. We want everybody's votes to count, so please make sure you vote early. and it's really easy to do it online. Thank you.
Mine's gonna be a little longer. Thank you for your questions. Thank you, fellow candidates, for your answers. I know the right answers are out there, waiting to be found. I believe so much in open dialogue and consultations with my constituents. We need to find new and innovative ways to generate revenue from tourism and bring new employers to Screwdog by developing the employment lands. We need to find lower cost housing for employees and our seniors. We have a small budget in relative terms and a huge wish list. We need to be creative in our spend and focus on generating revenue outside of tax increases. My platform centers around listening to you, open communications, and as much transparency as is legally possible, thinking outside the box, voting independently, and maintaining active seniors. As your counselor, you will get someone who listens to what you have to say, a new and independent point of view, and proactive communications with you. I will focus on community, engaging seniors and traffic. I will be inclusive and ask for your feedback. With my Italian heritage, I am a very passionate person, but my very English wife will tell you, one of the reasons she married me is I am passionate, always moving forward and getting things done. The Acclaim Council has awesome potential. When we leave office in 2026, I want to make sure we leave our roads and infrastructure better than what we found. I want to thank Wilma and Jack and the Old Flame for hosting this event. I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy lives and attending and submitting questions. Thank you to my amazing wife, Deborah, my daughters, my son-in-law, and grandchildren that's really stepped up after my incident. Thank you.
All right. As I mentioned earlier, I commend all three of you for stepping up to the plate and doing this. It's not an easy thing, walking the streets of Port Perry, discovering what's going on, and I'm sure not everybody welcomed you with open arms. I wish, honestly, like you had said, that more people had done that in other wards. So thank you very much. Thanks very much to all of you for being here. Thanks again to Jack and the Old Flame for hosting it. Thanks to Wilma. You're buying a beer? Good. Appreciate that.
I'm going to qualify that Jack is the host tonight.
Yeah, Jack is hosting it. Wilma's a guest. So hopefully for those of you who are not in Ward 5, you will go out and vote. It is important. We do have a regional council that we have to put in place for the region. We have school trustees, both Catholic, French, and public. And if you want to watch the election on Monday night, I hear the anchor for Rogers in Oshawa is really dynamic. So thank you very much for being here tonight. It was a good night. Appreciate it. Thanks.